Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 2 of Across the Pond with Adam and Andy. Super excited to be here again. In this episode, we're going to be talking about job seeker tips for experienced e-commerce professionals. We're going to do a second video for new graduates and how to break into e-commerce next week. This week is specifically for e-commerce professionals that may be out of work or looking to switch jobs. How to best go about doing that, how to do it, how to best go about your resume, how to best go about your LinkedIn profile, the job search process, the interview process. We're going to be giving some tips and tricks here. So I'm going to let Andy kick it off. I think we'll talk about resumes first, and hopefully this info will be super helpful and relevant to you in your job search. And if it is, let us know. We'd love to hear it. And if you have any additional questions, feel free to ping us after the video too. So Andy, take it away.
Cool. Thanks, Adam. And hello, everyone, again, to the however many or few people have watched this so far. So, yeah, resumes, I guess, or CVs. Sorry, I'm switching into using your language there. CVs.
There's a little bit of a culture difference there. That's what I like about this, getting the different perspectives.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I'm going to start by asking you a question on this, which is always a pretty contentious one, is what are your thoughts on formatting and style of people's CVs?
Yeah.
You know, whether it's, infographics or people who build websites around their, CV and kind of personal brand information, or like how far do you think that should go? Do you think that's beneficial?
Yeah, in certain positions, yes. So I would say like 90% of the time you want a standard, good-looking, well-formatted resume. But if you're a creative professional, you're showcasing your work in your resume and your portfolio. So, you can do a really nice portfolio website or use one of those portfolio marketplaces out there to host your portfolio on. And this is an opportunity for you to make your resume look very creative and professional, and it's a good representation of your work, right? Same thing if you're a software developer and you're displaying your work on a portfolio or a GitHub. You want to have all your information there so that people can get a nice, well-rounded view of your experience and what you can bring to the table. So it's a good way to represent your skills and expertise. But 90% of the time, you're not that creative in your role. You don't need to do that. But what you do need to do, in my opinion, and I'm sorry, I'm just taking over because you asked me this question now, is that you do have to have a resume that is very clear, is very concise, and one that is properly formatted in a way that is attractive to the viewer. I get a lot of resumes that are difficult to read. I have really good eyesight, like better than 20/20, I think, and I still can't read some of these resumes that I'm getting. I don't know what these people are thinking, using like size 8 font, or they're saving it as a PDF, but it gets saved as an image, so it's a little blurry. Make it as easy as you can on the reader to look at your resume and to really be able to digest it. So I'll start with that first. Format is important. You can get creative if you're a creative professional, and you have a portfolio to go along with it. But most of the time, as long as you make your resume nice, clear, concise, you're good to go on that end.
Yeah, I would say the same, really. I'm kind of agnostic either way about how you design or like how creative you get with it, if that's really what you want to do. And if that's kind of your personality, like fine. I don't really like it when you get agencies that want to standardize every single CV they send out. I feel like we don't do that. A bit of the candidate. We don't do anything like that. But really, whatever format you decide to take, you just ask yourself whether it looks good. Like, does it look easy to digest and pleasing on the eye? And like, often you'll open as seeing as many CVs as we do, the first thing you think is like, you can kind of tell, even without knowing what the content is, how well put together it is within a second, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I can't tell you how many resumes I get still that have grammatical errors. There's no excuse for this. You have tools out there that will automatically correct your grammar, your spelling, that'll double check it for you. Use this to your advantage, because you get one shot initially. Your resume is your first shot that hiring managers or recruiters are taking a look at you and assessing your ability. And if you have spelling mistakes on there, which are easy, everybody makes spelling mistakes, but not on a document that you're publicly putting out there. That this is, you're trying to put your best foot forward. And if you're not able to do that in your resume, how are you going to be able to do that on the job? That's their thought process, at least, right? So double
Yeah.
check your resume, have somebody else take a look at it, right? Send it to your friend, send it to a family member, just say, please, can you just take a look at this, make sure everything looks right, the spelling is correct and the grammar looks correct, because I'm going to be shooting this out to job boards and recruiters and hiring managers, and just want to make sure it looks good. So I would do that.
The best one that I've definitely seen a couple of times is people misspelling the phrase attention to detail. I mean, that's always
yeah, it is surprising how often that happens, and it's really unfortunate too.
What do you find is the most common thing you find yourself telling people about their CV? Or like if they ask you for, what they should do, or if you're telling them to change something or add something, what is the most common thing conversation you have?
Right. Okay. So my best resume tip is that you want to present yourself as relevant to the opportunity as possible. You need to be extremely specific in your resume about why you're a good fit for the position and how your experience relates. They say you should tailor your resume for each job you're applying for. And I think candidates get a little freaked out by that, because it's a lot of work to tailor your resume to each job that you're applying for. But really, all you have to change is a few things at the top of your resume. You have your summary, right? You have your summary or objective statement right at the top. And that is the perfect opportunity to tailor your resume to the job that you're applying for. This is just like a 3 or 4 sentence paragraph. And in this sentence, you can talk about how this is the job that you're targeting, right? If you're going after a digital marketing job, that you're talking about how you're looking for your next move as a digital marketing leader, and this is your digital marketing skill set right there in 3 or 4 sentences. So they know right off the bat. Now, if you're also going for merchandising jobs, you can change that for merchandising related positions and say, I'm an experienced merchandising professional and this is my merchandising skill set. So at the top, that's all you really need to change is that summary. And then I'm a big fan of bullet point qualifications right under the summary. And you can easily change those qualifications for each job that you're applying for too. So there you have like maybe 3, 6, 9 bullet point qualifications. And it's very easy to switch those out for each job that you're applying for. You don't need to change your experience in your work history. I don't think you need to do that for each role that you're applying for. It's mostly important that you nail down the summary and bullet point qualifications so that the person who's taking a look at your resume can tell right off the bat whether or not you're qualified, whether your background is relevant for the position, and whether or not they want to continue reading your resume. That's my number one tip for resumes and being able to tailor them to the job that you're applying for.
Yeah, mine would probably, I think it's kind of simple, but the thing that I find myself saying most commonly is, don't forget achievements. Like the biggest problem I would see is a list of responsibilities.
Yes.
And no achievements, which might seem obvious to some people, but I still see it a lot. Like I would go so far as to say is like I half the time don't really mind what your responsibilities are, because that's a job spec, right? And you don't want to read a CV that looks like a job spec.
Yeah, but a lot of people do that. A lot of people take their job description and basically just cut and paste it into the resume. And yes, you are correct. You do not want to do that. And you do want to have some really good achievements on there. And that's things like what? Saved the company X amount of dollars, or drove X amount of customers to the website, increased revenue X amount. These are tangible achievements that you'd like to see. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. It's stuff that's specific to you, right? Anyone could list the responsibilities of a job, but how you've then taken those responsibilities and actually achieved something. And that coupled with that, always pretty much always figures, numbers, you know, maybe for very creative jobs, that's not as relevant, but on the whole, yeah, people who don't have any kind of figures in their CV, I would always say go and find something that you can put in there.
Yeah, yeah, we're good. This is super small, but I prefer resumes coming over in PDF format versus Microsoft Word because they're easier to open, they look a lot nicer, and
They look better, yeah.
they do. If you have, sometimes you open up a Microsoft Word document and it'll appear like you have some sort of grammatical error or something doesn't look right because they're trying to tell you you should change some language on there, and you have that green line underneath your words. Sometimes the formatting on Microsoft Word does not translate well. I use an Apple MacBook, right? And for a Microsoft product, sometimes it gets really jumbled depending upon the word viewer that I'm looking at. So you want to make sure that the recruiter or hiring manager doesn't have that same issue. You want to make sure your formatting looks right. And if you're saving it in a PDF, you're ensuring that the formatting is saving correctly and the person is going to be looking at it that way, no matter what software program they're using or computer they're using. Just looks a lot nicer, in my opinion. I think that you touched upon something earlier, that a lot of agency recruiters on our side like to change candidates' resumes and slap their own logo on there and take out their contact information, which I think is kind of a scummy practice for agency recruiters to do. And if you have a good relationship with your client, you don't need to hide that information. They're not going to go behind your back to contact this person without you. So I'm a little skeptical of companies that do that. And Andy and I, we would never ask you to do that. So send over your resume in PDF format. If we see it and we see that there are changes that need to be made, we'll let you know. You could do it on your own and then send it back to us. But I don't know about you, but I don't want to touch anyone's resume myself. That's your baby there that I don't want to mess up. And we could certainly give you guidance on that. But ultimately, that's your resume there that we shouldn't be touching before we send over to clients, especially without your permission. Is that fair?
Yeah. I would say, you know, my slight caveat is we have some clients who ask for certain things to be put on and cover sheets and things like that, but you generally do it separate from the body of the CV, so you don't change the actual, you know, the rest of it. But yeah, on the whole, I would agree. PDFs always look better.
In the UK, are candidates using cover letters with their CVs? Are those important in the UK?
Mixed bag, really. I'm probably increasingly less. I would say it's an interesting one because I personally still would read that, as long as it's not too drawn out. If I've got a lot of applications, you know, that are of people who might be quite similarly, you know, experienced, or CVs that don't look, there's not an obvious standout, I do think a cover letter can help change that. But I know plenty of recruiters and in-house people who just never read them. So
yeah, I never read them.
Yeah,
I'll be honest with you, I just don't.
So I think I'm in the minority.
but I appreciate them, and I appreciate the work that goes into them. It's just my feeling on this is that all of that information that you're putting in a cover letter can be properly put into your resume. If you're doing it right in the summary, in your summary right up top, in the bullet point qualifications, in your experience. And actually, my thought is the more that you bake that into your resume, the more relevant it's going to be for the jobs that you're applying for anyway. So it's going to look a lot better. It's actually a good practice to write up a cover letter and have a resume, and then merge the two. Put your cover letter information into your resume to make sure that you're telling that story in your resume. I think that's most helpful, because we do get a ton of resumes, and it is very difficult to read every cover letter, even to read all the resumes that come in. It is very time consuming. So you want to make it as easy on the reader as possible, and eliminate any doubt right off the bat that you're potentially a good fit for the position. Your goal from your resume is just to get a call or an email and say, hey, you know, looks like it could be a potential fit. Let's see if we could explore it further. And that's it. Yeah.
And I think the flip side of the cover letter thing is that it can just as easily put people off if I see a stock cover letter that clearly wasn't written for the job that they've applied for, then that is an automatic kind of
And most of the time, that's what
negative.
cover letters are. Most of the time,
Yeah.
when I do receive cover letters, they are exactly a template. You can tell the person is just switching out the job title and the company name, and that's it. And that is not helpful at all. If you do create a cover letter, my advice to you is that you want to make this extremely personalized. Otherwise, there's really no point to it.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
What about what you do or don't include? And what I mean by that, maybe more specifically, is do you think there's other things that you should leave off?
Right. So I think that
I guess specifically around work experience, it's like obviously extracurricular, there's always things you should probably leave off, but yeah,
right.
related to what to work experience.
Right. So, I think that, again, going back to making it as relevant as possible, if there is a work experience that you have that is just not so relevant to the job you're applying for, it's probably not going to be a good idea to list it, because your goal is to be as hyper focused as possible on the job that you're applying for. So if you're, let's say you're applying for a job where, I don't know, you were going into, let's just use digital marketing again, right? But your experience before you got into digital marketing, you were in sales. You don't want to have half of your resume talking about your sales career when you're aiming for the digital marketing job. You can certainly list your sales experience on there, but just list your titles, your company that you worked at, the dates, maybe 1 or 2 bullet points, and that's it. Move on from there and really get into the meat of it, which is talking about your digital marketing experience, since you're applying for that digital marketing job. So you can certainly leave it on there, but don't have it be the focus of your resume or give it too much attention. You want to be as hyper focused as possible on that digital marketing job and making your resume focused on that accordingly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that. I just think one thing again that I often find myself saying to people is you'll be having a conversation with someone. It turns out that maybe there's a job in between 2 other jobs, or actually more recently they've moved somewhere, but it's not worked out, and they felt like it wasn't relevant to put it on. But I would always say it is, even if it's a short stint and it didn't work out. Whatever it is, you're just asking for trouble if you feel like, oh, I didn't put it on because it's not relevant. And
agreed.
I think you've got to own it.
Yeah, I would say leave it on. Again, don't make it the focal point, but leave it on. And you're right. Maybe you're going for a digital marketing job that has account management responsibilities, that has maybe the role merges into more of like a customer success manager, where you do have some sales or business development responsibilities, but even though you're in a digital marketing role, so that background comes in handy. I agree. And that information can certainly be left on your resume because of that.
Yeah.
Good. All right, let's move off of resumes for a bit.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, good. What about the LinkedIn profile? So somewhat similar, but this is different in that I think the LinkedIn profile is a bit more portfolio-like than your resume is. You get a little bit more color than what's on the resume. You get to look at things like the person's references and things that they've been commenting and posting on LinkedIn. You have a summary there to read. You have experience, and you see things on LinkedIn that you otherwise wouldn't see on a resume, right? It's something that you should also keep up to date, and that people are going to see publicly. Even if you don't put your resume out there, they're going to publicly be viewing your LinkedIn profile. What types of information should you keep on there that could make you seem like a good potential candidate down the road for people that may be hiring?
Yeah, so a few things there. I think it's increasingly there is more crossover, I think, between a LinkedIn profile and a CV. Right. So I do think you need to consider it as like, could this be there or thereabouts enough to get me an interview? And actually, in some cases, I don't know if you find this, but we would if someone hasn't got a CV together and we've approached them for a job, but they've got a good LinkedIn profile, we'll just share the LinkedIn profile and not the CV. And they might go through a process without ever having to put a CV
Yeah,
together.
I think
So I
more
think
and
if
more
it's,
hiring managers are okay with that. They're like,
yeah,
oh, if this person, especially for passive candidates that don't have a resume up to date, we say, okay,
yeah,
if it's going to take you a week to put together a resume, I'd rather just send over your LinkedIn profile, and they're going to be okay with it, assuming your LinkedIn profile is filled out enough. That's the key. This is
yeah.
why you should always have your LinkedIn profile up to date, so that you can actually use your LinkedIn profile as a resume if you need to, and not worrying about having to keep your resume up to date. That's a good point.
Yeah. Yeah. So definitely that. I think probably the one thing there that, you would understandably hold back potentially some of the stuff we talked about earlier about commercial figures, achievements, success. Like you're not going to reveal quite as much of that on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing there is how do you optimize it? It's you've got to think about SEO specifically for LinkedIn and how important that is for where you appear in searches from recruiters, in-house recruiters, agencies, hiring managers, whoever that might be.
Yeah. So when you say SEO, I think the key there is using relevant keywords, thinking about what people would be searching for on LinkedIn when they're looking for people that have this background. What keywords are they going to be searching for? And then how do you embed those keywords into your profile? Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The kind of endless debate. I don't know what your thoughts. I think we both kind of seem to spell it the same way. Obviously, it's the name of your company, so you do. But e-commerce, right? There are so many different names for it, and so many different ways of spelling it.
Yes, and LinkedIn does not make that easy on us, because when we do a search for the keyword e-commerce on LinkedIn, you have to do it two ways. You have to do e-commerce without the dash, just one word. Then you have to do e-commerce with a dash, but you have to put it in quotes. And that's how you pull up everybody that has e-commerce in their profile. Otherwise, it'll only show up one way.
Yeah. I would even beyond that though, like I would say there are, businesses here where their e-commerce team is called e-business,
Ah,
e-retail, e-tail. Like
yes.
I would say if you're someone that's your job title or the kind of
Good
your
point. Use
company
all the
name for it is
relevant
that,
keywords. Yeah.
yeah, or get e-commerce in there somewhere, even if internally you guys call it, yeah, e-tail or something like that, which is,
Yes.
which is a bit more obscure.
Mhm.
Yeah, think about that. Even change your job title really, like if externally it should be something different to what you guys call it internally, no problem. I think just changing it and calling yourself, an e-commerce manager rather than a
Yeah.
e-retail manager that you might be, something like that.
Yeah, I agree. Good point. Good point. Yeah, excellent. Okay, so let's move on to the job search process. What do you think candidates can do in the actual job search itself in locating roles that might be a fit for them, applying, finding new jobs? What should they be focusing on here?
Yeah, I think that's probably is the kind of seems like the most relevant thing at the minute in terms of what people are um, asking about, people who are looking, how they go about doing that. I think the biggest problem people are having at the minute, or the biggest frustration people are having, is the number of jobs that either, they feel like they're applying for stuff, they're not hearing anything back. Is it a live job? Is it not? Am I up against 600 other people who are applying? Definitely volume of applications are kind of off the scale at the minute. So, is there any even point in applying? Is something that people would ask. Am
Yeah,
I just wasting my time? So I would say, for a start, no, you're not wasting your time applying for stuff, but you need to be selective,
yes.
and you need to be, you need to, as you kind of said, tailoring your CV to specific roles that you're applying for.
Yeah. And Andy, how many times do you post a job where you get 90% of the applicants that are just not relevant at all? And you question, why are these people wasting their time applying to a job? Like, I feel bad for them that they're wasting their time on this when they really should be focusing their time specifically on finding roles that are just extremely relevant to what they're looking to do.
Mm.
Uh, and that is really where you should be spending your time. It's identifying these roles. And we talked about keywords earlier for LinkedIn optimization. Do the same thing when you're thinking about roles that you're applying for, in trying to come up with all different relevant keywords to the jobs that you're applying for. So let's just say digital marketing again. If you're looking for a role in digital marketing, sometimes the position, if it's a specialist role, it's not going to have digital marketing in the title. So you're not going to want to search for digital marketing in the title. Maybe you're going to want to search for search engine optimization, SEO, or search engine marketing, SEM, or affiliate, or display, or email, or paid social. So you have to understand all of the keywords that are relevant to the position that you're applying for. This will help you identify those roles out there. People still get hired from applying to jobs. It does happen. So I don't discourage anyone from applying to jobs, but really try to locate the ones that are relevant to your background and what you're looking to do. And don't go out there and just apply to every job you see. It's not going to work out. You're only going to waste your time. And I just want to help you in using your time wisely and getting hired as quickly as possible. And if you're going out there and just blindly applying to jobs, it's not going to happen that way.
Yeah. I would say the thing you can then, well, there's a couple of things there. I would say, I think you need, you need some structure to how you're going to apply for stuff. So I would actually, plan as if you were planning a day in a normal job. What's my day consist of, and how do I split that up into different parts and give each one the time that it needs? I think if it's like relying on, I'll do a quick search and click apply on anything that is vaguely relevant, it's not going to do you very good. And as you say, 90% of applications we get are probably not right for the job they've applied for. So, what does that look like? What am I going to do for the first hour of the day? Is it just listing down long list of all the jobs that might be relevant, then go to the company websites, do some research on them if you don't know anything about them yet, revisit the jobs, narrow that list down to a smaller list, and then tailor your application specifically to that. I think the next thing I really think you can benefit from at the minute is, and increasingly actually, is figuring out who the correct people to speak to on LinkedIn are and sending them an introduction, trying to connect with them, trying to engage with a hiring manager or talent acquisition manager directly.
Or a specialist agency recruiter like ourselves.
Or a specialist agency recruiter. Yeah, but whoever's looking after that job, you're right. If we get 300 applications for a job that we post, but someone messages me directly on LinkedIn to say, hey, I'm going to apply for this, but I also just wanted to drop you a note to connect. There's a chance I might not have seen their application yet, but that'll make me check them out and go and have a look at them and maybe have a conversation quicker than I otherwise would. Or they are automatically elevated above anyone else who might be as strong as them on paper, but they've got, they're one step ahead. So I would absolutely do that. And whether that's, applying directly with a company or applying with a recruiter, I would always suggest that.
Good. If you're a hiring manager watching this too, I would love to see the process made easier for candidates. So the most time-consuming process, I think, is that they send their resume and they attach it in the job posting, but then they have to fill out that same information again in an application on their website. And that is incredibly time-consuming. It's demoralizing to the candidate. I would imagine that you get a pretty high drop-off rate too. They're like, oh, I don't want to fill out this information again. This company is old school, making me do this. Is this really the type of company that I want to work for? It's not good for employer branding. So work with your HR teams on this. Try to streamline that process, make it as easy as possible for the candidate. And I think you're going to be getting a lot better quality coming in the door. And it's just, in general, it's a lot better for everybody if you make the process for applying easier and not this long drawn out application process that you're filling in for information over and over again. Hate to see that on either side of the table. Good. Okay. So we talked about applying for jobs and networking. What about building your brand on LinkedIn? Do you think this is something, this everyone's right now is talking about building your personal brand on LinkedIn and how that helps you network, how it helps you land jobs and speaking engagements, and one day you'll be able to run for president because you've branded yourself appropriately. But do you think that this is helpful in landing a job, or is it just a waste of time and something that just gets a lot of likes from influencers that are talking about it?
Mm. Um, yeah, I would say I've yet to see it from a candidate perspective. I think really pay off. Maybe anecdotally, I don't know everyone who's kind of building themselves a brand as a candidate. Obviously, as recruiters, we see it a lot with recruiters or people like not even necessarily people in recruitment, but people selling, like social selling through LinkedIn.
Right.
Fine, like it's incredibly relevant. But as a candidate, I think my instinct is it can be long term, just as a network building exercise and kind of getting yourself known. And certainly,
Agreed.
if that then is, you might be more likely to get land spots speaking at events, or building a kind of presence in that way. I think as an immediate tool for finding a job, not my I don't think so personally. I don't think it's hugely beneficial, which isn't to say you shouldn't be doing it, but I don't think you should be doing it with the expectation that anything's going to come out of it that quickly.
Yeah, agreed. I think I think you're right. It's a more of a long-term play. So even if it doesn't help you land your immediate job right away, if you continue with it though long term, I do think it has a big benefit to you in your career. Being seen as a thought leader in the space, where somebody down the road has a new opening for a digital transformation job, and you're out there on LinkedIn posting content around digital transformation constantly, and they're going to say, hey, Andy is somebody that really knows what he's talking about in regard to digital transformation. We have this new opening. I think he'd be a good fit for it. So it's just being top of mind like that. But you're right, it's a long-term play. It's not going to be the immediate. It's going to be much more impactful immediately if you're doing proper networking, directly reaching out to individuals, directly applying for jobs. That's going to be much more of an immediate reward there in landing your next job. But the long-term play in developing in your career, I do think personal branding plays a big role in that and should be something that could be considered.
Yeah. What do you think about how, as a candidate, you approach building relationships with recruiters and how you use those to your benefit? I asked the question because I think part of my thinking around that from again, it's a longer term perspective, but I think if you're a candidate, you should view a recruiter as a way just to extend your network without having to do all the networking, right? Which is obvious if you're applying for jobs that they are actually recruiting for. That's kind of the obvious example of that. Yeah. But I think also, if you spend time over a period of time building a relationship with a few recruiters in your space, you're more likely to get information from them that might help you land a job that actually isn't something they're hiring for, but they're going to know someone who is. Or if I've got really good relationships with people I've worked with for years, I'm more inclined to say, I think they're hiring. I'm not recruiting for it, but I know they're doing it directly. This is the person we need to go and speak to. Like that. I think you can get a lot of value. That we spend all of our day pretty much learning about who's hiring, what they're looking for, etc. I think, if you maybe it works for you if you need a recruiter every time you kind of are looking for a very specific job. But I often think actually people, could kind of find more value if they put a bit more time into that.
Yeah, I agree. And there are two ways that we go about presenting candidates. And the first way is that we have a relevant job opening for them that we're presenting them, and if they're interested, we're then presenting their candidacy to the client, right? But the second way we do it is their background is fantastic. We've worked with a client that is right up their alley. We don't know of a position right now that they're hiring for, but would still love to get their resume in front of them so that if there is an opportunity now or potentially down the road, they can consider them for that. And that's not something you can do when you're just applying for jobs. This is a big benefit of working with an agency recruiter. The other benefit of working with an agency recruiter is that we're aware of jobs that are not publicly posted, right? So a lot of the jobs that we're working on, they're confidential for various reasons. The companies that we're working with don't want to post these positions publicly. So you're never going to find these jobs on job boards, but we're aware of them. And these are positions that we can certainly talk to you about and see if you might be interested in and present your candidacy for. So yes, there's a bit of a hidden job market out there sometimes, and it's good to work with an agency recruiter in order to tap into that.
Yeah. What I'm really saying there is I don't feel used enough.
Reach out to Andy, everybody. He's your guy. Good. Okay, so let's move on to the interview process now and talk about what is important for you to convey during interviews in order to land that job. So your resume has been on point, your LinkedIn profile is great, your job search has been effective because you now have the interview right now. What is most important to focus on during the interview, specifically for e-commerce roles too, right? What do you think these companies that are hiring for e-commerce positions, what are they looking for in the interview process to determine whether or not you're a good fit for their position?
I don't know how, but the first thing that came to mind with that question, I don't know if this is just specific to e-commerce, but it's certainly a wider market trend that we're seeing at the minute, is the need to tick every single box, and maybe even more boxes than there really should be, allocated to one particular job. I think we are seeing hiring picking up, but I think we're still seeing companies being maybe more risk averse in hiring than they would have been in the past. So if they are going to hire, it's going to be someone who ticks, multiple boxes, both like technically in your ability to do the job, but also culture fit and all of those other points. So that's a fairly generalist piece of advice, but I think going in expecting to be pushed in every single area of your experience, not just, right, I'm an expert in one area and that's all they're going to ask me about, is pretty important. I think culture fit has become more and more important for clients that we work with on the whole in the past few years. So I think just expecting to get by on competencies and skill set is increasingly unlikely. So doing your research on culture fit, if you're working with a recruiter, trying to get as much from them about their experience working with them, and this is where the quality of the brief that the recruiter's been given is important, because how much do they actually know about the company that they're working with, and how much can you pull from that? But understanding values, culture, what they put about on their company page, how that's relevant, how you can pull that experience out. But I also think the flip side there is people talk about culture and values a lot, both candidates and hiring managers. I think it's more like what you've done to demonstrate that you fit with that kind of culture and value, not just, I think, your values are openness, collaboration, transparency, and those are all things that I love. Like, that doesn't really tell you anything. And I think there is still a lot of that around, that people think like knowing them is one thing, showing how you've demonstrated them is another.
Good point. Yeah, excellent. Very good. I think what's very important for hiring managers is that the person can come in and hit the ground running without a lot of hand holding and without a lot of training. Candidates would love to be trained a significant amount of their new roles, but on the flip side, there's no time for it. And e-commerce is an environment where it's super fast paced and it's all hands on deck, and they're moving at a speed that just doesn't allow for a lot of long-term training on the job when you first start. So they really value candidates that can come in, hit the ground running, that know what they're doing from day one. This is something that you want to demonstrate during your interview, that this is something that you can handle, that you can pick this up right away, that you're not going to need a lot of guidance, and they want individuals that can take ownership and run with it. So that's something I think that you need to focus on during your interviews. I think it's a great idea to bring ideas already to the table during the interview process. So if you're working in a role that requires site optimization, take a look at their site beforehand, bring in a list of ideas that you have right from the get-go on what they can be doing to better optimize their website. And then even have a 30, 60, 90-day plan. This plan that you have may not be something that could actually be implemented because you don't have as much information about the business as you would need, but them just seeing what your thought process is like for this 30, 60, 90-day plan is going to be extremely helpful to them in determining whether or not it's a good fit for the position, if you have the ability to come in and get involved in the projects that they need to in order to help get them to the next level. That's going to be extremely beneficial to them. So again, I think relevancy is extremely important. Bringing ideas to the table already is extremely important, and ensuring that they get the feeling that you can come in and hit the ground running without a lot of training and handholding, because e-commerce is just such a crazy environment. I think that'll make you most successful in interview.
Yeah, I think the one thing that you said there that really resonated with me, the thing that kind of makes me feel kind of most positive, if you speak to a candidate ahead of their interview about prep and they say, yeah, I've done these lists, I've gone on the site, if it's an e-com role, and I've got 5 recommendations for things they could do immediately to improve the experience. Or we had one recently where we were recruiting for a company who sold relatively premium products. Their products, a couple of £100. And one of the candidates has said he'd purchased it and gone through the entire process and made kind of notes at every single point throughout that whole journey to say, like, how was my experience as a customer?
I love it.
What do they do really well? What do they not do really well? Like,
that's genius.
It's brilliant.
Hiring managers eat that up. And if you think about it, if you were hiring for a recruiting position on your team, right, and somebody that you're interviewing comes to the table with, Adam, I recruited for this company and this is the way that we were doing things, and I can see immediately it would make an impact on the way that you do things in your business, and this is how you could get more candidate flow, this is how you can make more hires, this is how you can get more clients. And if they already have that coming to the table, I'm going to be like, this is the person that I need, that is energetic, that has these really good ideas, that understands my business and how to improve it. This is the type of candidate that I want, rather than somebody that is going to require a lot of training and a lot of time understanding the business and getting into the weeds. I want somebody that already has the mindset that they're going to come in and really crush the job.
Yeah, agreed.
Good. What about cool. Follow-up? Is that important to you after the interview? Do you suggest that the candidate follow up with the hiring manager with an email, thanking them for the time, reiterating their interest in the role? Is that something that's important, do you think?
Yeah, I think it is important. I wouldn't always, go out of my way to suggest it necessarily, but I would also never stop I'd never advise against it. I'd never stop someone from doing it. I think it's, very relevant. Again, LinkedIn, can just be that you could do that over LinkedIn. Yeah. But equally asking for, again, I love it if a candidate says, do you mind if I have their email address so I can just email them directly and thank them? Like, brilliant.
I think it's a good idea, because I don't want the hiring manager to wonder if the person got done interviewing with them, whether or not they're still interested in the position. I don't want them to have any doubt. So if they receive a thank you note, a nice thank you note, thanking them for their time, saying, it was amazing chatting with you today. I'm super interested in what we discussed about so-and-so. Like, I like this to be as specific as possible. We talked about using templates for cover letters. A lot of people use templates for thank you notes, and that's a bad idea. You don't want it to be standard. You don't want it to look like you just send the same thing out to everybody. You want it to be really personalized based on the conversation that you had with this person. So I like it. I think it shows that they're interested, and it eliminates any doubt on that end.
Yeah. I also find, a recruiter, what you don't want a recruiter being involved to do is to kind of get rid of like the human element between a hiring manager and someone they're hiring. I always find it really weird when there is no communication between a business and a candidate other than through a recruiter through the entirety of the process. Like early on, maybe there will be, but
I agree. And Andy, do you know what my preference even is? I prefer not to extend the offer myself. I think the offer should come from the hiring manager directly, so that they can have that conversation. The hiring manager can show their enthusiasm for the person coming on board, right? It's very hard to get that enthusiasm factor when the recruiter is in between. I'm like, oh, they love you. They would love to have you on board. It's one thing coming from me saying that. It's another thing hearing it from the hiring manager directly, where they're like, oh, the person that I'm going to be working for is fantastic. They're extremely nice. They really want me on the team. So hearing that directly from them is, I think, you have a better shot of landing the candidate if you're getting the offer directly from the hiring manager than from the recruiter. Of course, we're still in the process negotiating, where the candidate then after that call will get in touch with them and talk to them about the offer and how they feel about it and that sort of thing. But I agree. I think as much direct communication with the company as possible is really what makes these interactions so successful.
Yeah, and I think you're much likely also. It's maybe slightly different over here because a lot of people are on 3 months notice periods, which is in the US it's 2 weeks most of the time, right? Is that?
Yeah. So you're saying when you take on a new role, you have to give your current company 3 months notice?
Yeah. So
Whoa.
my point behind that is if during that 3 months, sometimes during that 3 months, right, someone can decide actually they're going to stay where they are, or actually they end up taking a different job.
I would imagine in 3 months that happens quite a bit, because that's such a long period of time.
Thankfully it doesn't happen it doesn't happen too much, but when it does, often it's when the company have had no communication with the candidate, right? That there is no like affinity there other than there's no relationship there. And we'll always keep in touch with candidates during that period, but actually I would always want the line manager to also be keeping in touch, going for a drink, involving them with the team. And the clients we've got who do that, they're the ones that never lose people during that 3 months. The ones who think, okay, we've got an acceptance, I'll see them in 3 months' time, that's where the problems come in.
Now, how is that just a cultural norm in the UK where it's 3 months, or is that something mandated by law?
No, it's not mandated. It's often a lot less for probationary. So, for the first 6 months, you might have 1 or 2 weeks some of the time, or maybe 4 weeks. But and it's changed. It seems to become more and more common. Often, it used to be probably more common that at a junior level it was 1 month, and then you get to a certain level and it's 3 months. Actually, once you get to a more senior level, you're talking kind of board and board level, C-suite. It's 6 months.
Wow.
But 3 months
most of the time for the people that we're recruiting, it's usually two weeks to 4 weeks. So yes, the more senior level candidates need to give a month's notice, and individuals that have been with their company for some time, they want to give more notice, right? But it's never past 4 weeks generally. 3 months, wow, that's a lot. It's a long time. Very interesting. Okay. Good. Okay. So, Andy, do you have anything else that you want to chat about before we wrap this up?
No, I don't think so at the minute. I would
Okay.
just say to anyone who's got this far and is watching this, and anything specific that you want us to talk about. We've got ideas, we've got stuff planned for the next few, but certainly, yeah, we want it to be as interactive as possible. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
whatever you want us to talk about, let us know.
Yeah, for the next few, so we have a video similar to this one, but it's going to be focused on new graduates and how they could enter the workforce and land a job in e-commerce. I think it's a little bit different than more experienced e-commerce professionals looking for their next job. The job market is a bit tighter. They don't have the experience generally that they can show on their resume and talk about during the interview, but we'll pull that out. We'll talk about how they can talk about relevant information and really position themselves well for a career in e-commerce. And then we have a video series that we're planning on diversity and inclusion in e-commerce that I think is going to be really interesting as well. So we have some great videos coming out soon. Hope you're enjoying these. And Andy, it's been great. We'll talk next week, okay?
Pleasure. Yeah. Thanks,
All
Adam.
right. Take care.